But let me tell you about our guest tonight, Dr. Dawes. Dr. Dawes has lived much of his life in Jamaica. I'm a little envious, and I'd like to take the next trip with you. And is currently the Chancellor's Professor of English at the University of Nebraska. He thought the weather outside tonight was balmy and quite nice. For us, we're all looking for a space heater. But he writes poems on politics, love, and religion. His latest collection, Duppy Conqueror, New and Selected Poems, was published in 2013. Dr. Dawes has received numerous awards for 16 books on poetry, and in 2004, he received the Musgrave Silver Medal for his contribution to the arts in Jamaica. He has also won an Emmy and Webby for an interactive website based on his project titled Hope, Living and Loving with AIDS in Jamaica. Please help me welcome Dr. Kwame Dawes.
All right. It's an honor to be here, and I'm grateful for the invitation to be with you here tonight. The idea of cold is a fascinating concept to me. I was born in Ghana and grew up in Jamaica, where temperatures never dropped to this level unless you lived in a refrigerator. But I live in Nebraska now, and it turns out your body can get used to all kinds of torturous things. So now I go outside here, and I think it's superbly balmy and lovely weather, which I'm sure you find annoying. But too bad, that's your problem, not mine. But it's going to drop. Apparently, it's going to drop to about 34 degrees today. So that's like almost freezing. You know that, right? So you can turn off your refrigerator and put all your groceries outside, and they won't rot. That's the good news. That's the good thing about it. Okay. All right. So I started with humor because after that, there's no more humor in this reading. It's just grim, miserable stuff. You'll be weeping and bawling, and you're going to just wonder why you ever came out to a reading to torture yourself and punish yourself in that way. So if you didn't laugh at my early jokes, that's on you also, because I gave you an opportunity to enjoy yourself, and it's over now, okay? So, on that note, you think I'm joking. Oh, boy. Oh, man. Touch my finger on the golden thread, the golden pen, oh, the golden pen. Touch my finger on the golden pen and write my name up there. Write my name, write my name up there. About a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, I was in Kenya, in Nairobi, at the Story Moja Festival, and I was there with an uncle of mine called Kofi Awana. At that event, we were waiting to do a reading together. I was waiting for him, and I got news that he had been killed. And he had been shot during the terrorist attack that took place in the mall, just a few miles away from where I was. We just published a collection of his poems, and I really had convinced him to leave Ghana to come to Kenya for that event, for that reading. So it was very painful for me to get that news, and but also a very personal loss. So for my readings, I've tried to read a poem for him, and I've done that for almost 2 years, and so we'll do it again, just a short poem by Kofi Awana called Counting the Years. As usual, as in the early dreams, I come to the whistling shores, the voice of the high-domed crab stilled, but a chorus remains of the water creatures of earlier times, of the birth time and the dying time, the pity, when we resurrect the travelers, the anchorman on our singular boat that will take us home. I lived in Canada for many years. I lived in a place called Fredericton, New Brunswick. I studied there, and then I played in a band, and so we were based in Fredericton, New Brunswick. I played in the band for a number of years, but 2 years after I had my PhD, I stayed in Canada largely to play with this band because, of course, we were convinced that we were going to have our big break and all that nonsense. And it didn't happen, but so I got a job working for the New Brunswick government, and my job was to visit fish farms to find out how they were training their staff. My PhD, of course, was in the perfect subject to do that kind of work. I had a PhD in English literature. So it occurred to me, they gave me an office, which I found remarkable, and the office had computers, and a computer. This was 1990, so a computer in an office at your disposal was not normal. Plus a printer, it had a printer, and it had stacks of paper, reams of paper. So what I did was I visited all the farms in about 3 weeks, wrote my report, and then came to work early in the mornings, locked the door with a sign on my door saying I was out, touring, and I wrote poetry and printed it out again and again and again. It was great. You write and you go, let me look at that. Print. I need to change that dot. Print. So this is one of the poems that came out of it. It's called Progeny of Air. The propellers undress the sea, the pattern of foam like a broken zip opening where the bow cuts the wave and closing in its wake. The seals bark, gulls call and dive, then soar loaded with catch. The smell of rotting salmon lingers over the Bay of Fundy like a mortuary's disinfected air. Fish farms litter the coastline, metal islands, cultivating with scientific precision these gray-black, pink-fleshed fish. In the old days, salmon would leap up the river to spawn, journeying against the current. They are travelers. When tucked too low, searching for undertows to rest upon, they often scrape their bellies on the sharp adze and bleed. Now watch them turn and turn in the cages, waiting for the feed of colorized herring to spit from the silver computer bins over the island of sea farms. And General, the hugest of the salmon, has a square nose where a seal chewed on a super freeze winter night when her blood panicked and almost froze. Jean-Pierre, the technician and sea cage guard, thinks they should roast the General in onions and fresh sea water. It is hard to read mercy in his stare and matter-of-factly way. He wears layers, fisherman's uniform, passed from generation to generation, the plaid shirt, the stained yellow jacket, the ripped olive green boots, the black slack trousers with holes, the whiskers, and eye of sparkle as if salt sea has crystallized on his sharp cornea. He guides the boat in, spills us out after our visit with a grunt and a grin, willing us to wet our sneakers at the water's edge. The sun blazes through the chill, the motor stutters, the sea parts, and then zips shut and still. Stunned by their own intake of poison, the salmon turn belly up on the surface, then sucked up by the plastic piscillator, they plop limp and gasping in the sunlight. And one by one, the glove technicians press with their thumbs the underside of the fish, spilling the eggs into tiny cups destined for the hatchery. Anesthetized eyes glazed shock on the steel deck. They know the males from the females, always keep them apart. Never let seed touch egg. Never let the wind carry the smell of birthing through the June air. Unburdened now, the fish are flung back in. They twitch, then tentative as hungover denizens of nightmares. They swim the old Sisyphean orbit of their tiny cosmos. The fish try to spawn at night, but only fart bubbles and herring. On the beach, the rank stillness of murdered salmon is thick in the air. Brown seaweed sucks up the blood. The beach is a construction site of huge cement blocks which moor the sea cages when tossed 80 feet down. They sink into the muddy floor of the bay and stick. There is no way out of this prison for the salmon. They spin and spin in the algae green netting, perpetually caught in limbo, waiting for years before being drawn up and slaughtered, staked and stewed. And in the morning silence, the sun is turning over for a last doze, and silver startles the placid ocean. Against the gray-green of Deer Island, the salmon leaps in a magical arc, slaps the metal walkway in a bounce, and then dives, cutting the chilled water to the other side. Swimming is general. This is my fantasy, with the square nose and the skin gone pink with seal bites escaping from this wall of nets and weed. General swims upriver alone, leaping the current with her empty womb, leaping, still instinct, still traveling to the edge of Lake Utopia, where after so many journeyings, after abandoning this secure world of spawning and living at the delicate hands of technicians, after denying herself social security and the predictability of a steady feeding and the safety from predator, seal and osprey, after enacting the Sisyphean patterns of all fish, here in the shadow of the Connor's sardine factory, she spawns her progeny of air and dies. Thank you. Thank you. As some of you might know, I lived in South Carolina for about 19 years. Just about 4 years ago we left. It's still home to me in many ways. And this poem was written when I visited an old plantation just outside of Charleston. And I went there because I was scouting the venue to put a poet in residence there to write about the place. And I joined a tour of one of the great houses that was on the land, because that's all they toured. And I was becoming a bit of an annoyance to the tour guide because I kept asking unfortunate questions about the plantation. So if she said this was the kitchen, I would ask who cooked. And if she said, you know, this is where the bedrooms were, I would say, where did the slaves sleep? It was becoming a little annoying because it's not part of the tour, if you understand what I mean. Because the tour is for people who are planning to have weddings on the plantation. So my questions were not the kind of thing that people planning to get married wanted to hear. So it was getting a bit tricky. So she finally said maybe I should go to the main office because they would have answers to my questions. And of course, everybody who was on the tour was looking at me mean like. So I left and I went to the main office, and I'm sure I heard a hallelujah on my departure. At the main office, they took me on a tour, and they were very candid about it. And at one point, the guy who was taking me on the tour showed me a tree, and he said, this is what they call the hanging tree. So the poem is called How to Pick a Hanging Tree. Pastoral scene of the gallant South, the bulging eyes and the twisted mouth. Scent of magnolias, sweet and fresh, then the sudden smell of burning flesh. Lewis Allen. Young trees may look sturdy, but they have no memory. They are green so near the surface they bend with the sudden weight. And the truth is that not all trees can carry a man's dead weight with enough air between pointed toes and earth, with enough eye height so the scent of rotten can carry far enough to be a message for those who are sniffing the muggy air for news. Old as it may look, craggy bark, twisted branches, drooping limbs, old as it may seem, sitting there by the edge of the canal, that live oak understands the simple rituals of hanging. See, there is the natural notch where the rope will slip and hold, and here, angled like this, the damp air of the river carries the decay for miles and miles. Sometimes a fresh tree will simply die after the piss of a dying man seeps into its roots. Sometimes a tree will start to rot from guilt or something like a curse. But the old trees, seasoned by the flame of summer lightning and hardened to tears, know it is nothing to be a tree, mute and heartless, just strong enough to carry a man until he turns to air. Thank you. This is a related poem called Rope. It's based on a play by August Wilson. I'll read the last 2 lines first, and then I'll read the poem. Someday, a soul will come out of the fields to claim it, and then we will know. Someday, a soul will come out of the fields to claim it, and then we will know. To hold our lives together on the cart before the slow march after midnight along the back roads, blind driving, the scent of the exhaust making us drowsy, every shadow in the fields a threat of sorts. We use rope, thick as 2 thumbs side by side, pulling hard on the knot to keep our paths from falling by the wayside. We have kept this rope supple with oil, constant use, never letting it stay idle long enough to rot. It is hard to look at the coiled silence of our strongest rope and not think of what it has held. The heavy gray-green battered bucket knocking the stone sides of the wall, top water spilling back down, this cherished substance carrying our lives. The mare, white and gray, plodding across the wide open field at dusk, her head heavy with labor, the rope a caress against her neck, the way she turns towards a gentle tug. We hold the balance of our need in this rope, the dead weight of Junebug at dawn, his skin still steaming, his beautiful black skin catching the morning light, tender among the leaves. How we found him there, his neck stretched, the wrapping of several yards of taut rope around the drooping branch. Where we found it, how we untied the knot and let his body down into our arms, then carried it like a soldier's flag, bearing it behind the cart, shaking along with his swollen body. This ordinary rope, this gift we cannot forget, this remembrance of what we have lost. Someday, a soul will come out of the fields to claim it, and then we will know. This is a poem in the voice of a woman I interviewed in Sumter, South Carolina in 1995. It's called black funk. The rigid of my backbone is forged in the oven of every blow I have felt. My water walk is something like compensation for a limp. Don't begrudge me my sachet walk, it's all I got sometimes. 'Cause I know the way you stare, pale blue eyes like a machete edge, catching the color of new sky. The way you barely whisper your orders, spit out the food, complain about my shuffling gait, snorting out my funky smell, find fault in each task I do, never right, never good enough, curse my children like dogs, 'cause I know you just hurting, drooling your bitterness when my back is turned, when the shape of my black ass swings that way you hate, sashaying through this room of daggers. I know you're wondering what I got down there in my belly, in my thighs, make him leave your side. Crawl out of his pale skin and pole, howl like a beast at night, whimper like a motherless babe. You can't hide the shame you feel to know I sometimes turn him back. I know you know it from the way he comes on you, hard and hurried, searching for a place to weep his soul in. Yes, I turn him back when I want, and he still comes back for more. I got my pride sometimes. I know the way you try to read me, try to be me, can't be me, never feel the black of me, never know the blues in me, 'cause you never want to see you in me, even though we bleed together, finding each other's tidal rhythms and bloat together like sisters, hoarding the waters of the moon together. So I sashay through your life, averting the blades with my leather skin. I abuse you. And when he bawls, that is my pride at work, all I got sometimes. I cook your meals, I will, until he keels over. And you just have to take it, 'cause I took it with no fuss when he forced his nothing self on me while my babies sucked their thumbs within the sound of my whimper. And I paid, baby. I'm just reaping what y'all done sowed. Like I said, in '95, I interviewed women who lived under the Jim Crow system of life. These women were in the average age in their 80s. African American women, strong, beautiful women. And almost each one of them, when I asked them how many siblings they had, they would give a number. They would say 12, and then they would say 3 died in childbirth, 4 died in childbirth, 2 never saw their second year. It was almost a ritual of the kinds of lives that they had to deal with in rural South Carolina. So this poem is for those who passed. It's called Stillborn. Take my baby home. Take my baby home. I ain't free and never will be. Take my baby home. Oh, glory. Oh, glory. There is room enough in paradise to have a home. I still count them, feeling them like ghost limbs. There is a place in my collection of years. Remembering them is a way to remember to count the pressure pills, the heart pills, the blood pills, the tyranny of pills. I count those who died before they woke, those I cradled, caressed, cocooned to live, hoping beyond the weakness of their cries. They died too, leaving us with tough questions for God Almighty. Old black folk have buried so many babies in the bush behind the cotton groves with the naked form of cotton bales standing like sentinel crucifixes against the stale blue of summer skies. Oh, glory. Oh, glory. There is room enough in paradise to have a home. And mother gathers her body and the tears and builds new fires, cooks new meals, readies her womb to replenish its rooted self, to make more brothers, sisters like second nature. She carries her mourning like second skin away to count the days. My mother bore 9 children. We chant this as a litany of her strength. 3 did not see their second year, and she did not live to see the second year of her washed belly, washed soul, washed body, the thin film of her drying birth water scraped off with a rough cloth as they laid her out to rest. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long way from home. I kind of warned you, right? Pretty grim stuff. Okay. It gets better. It's like a lightened part. It's like a Super Bowl concert in the middle. So, I recently did some work in Jamaica on HIV/AIDS and the church, and I interviewed people who are living with the disease who are Christians, and tried to find out whether they told of their condition, whether they're willing to tell members of their congregation about it, and some of the challenges they face. I spoke to pastors, I spoke to a lot of people, and it's a tough role to hold. So this is a poem for a woman called Carol Fleming. Briefly, Carol's husband was a minister, but he was living a second life. He was bisexual, clearly. She didn't know this about him. And he contracted the disease and gave it to her, and then of course he eventually died of HIV/AIDS, and she's still living. But he had a lover who was a guy, and so she then had to deal with that in the church. So this is a poem called Bush Bath in the Barnyard, and it's for Carol. Journey, my Jesus, journey along with me. Journey, my Jesus, journey along with me. You bury the husband with drum and tambourine. Come Sunday. The truck arrives and you wear the white of healing, your feet and forehead oil to a sheen, and your body waiting for the fresh anointing of the barnyard. Yes, they have promised a live rooster waved over your body at the altar of sacrifice, where shame will cleanse and heal the body. Mother, the great stone has to move. Move the great stone, Mother, is your petition song. Mother, the stone is your fare for your son. Mother, the great stone is the hunger at the door at night. Stone of Babylon. Mother, oh Mother, stone of Babylon has got to move. In the shelter of women's hands, the body stripped to its most vulnerable, first nakedness leaps, your skin opens wide, stretches hungrily for the open palm of the woman's rub, the warm water on the skin, sun warmed, breath warmed, love warmed, and this is the wake. This is the after time, for the husband is dead, and his wayward spirit, the one that would not settle for the comforts of home, for the wife of his youth. The restless soul must now rest, for love is gone, and in that afterlife there shall be no taking of husbands and wives in marriage. But here on this side of the pale, love persists in the healer's hand as the barnyard sings the content of the bath. the names of the bush, the cool alcove of zinc sheets sheltering where the warmth of the white towel, the swaddling cloth you are gathered in, holds you, keeps you from yourself, comforts you as the orange light spreads across the ululation of clouds. Journey, my Jesus, journey along with me. Journey, my Jesus, journey along with me. All right. Now for a little levity. So here's the thing. This poem is, I always try to make sure everybody understands. It's not about my wife. It's not. It may seem to be about my wife, but it's not. And if you run into her, you can tell her that I made that clear at the reading, that it's not about her. And now, I would admit that I could not have written this poem if I was not married to my wife. This is quite different from a poem being about her. I hope you recognize the difference. Now, there's a problem with my saying it's not about my wife, because then the question then comes up, then who is it about? Which is a trickier question, really, when you think about it, especially if my wife asks me that. So, but the answer to that question is, I'm a poet. I imagine this stuff. It just came into my head. So the poem is called If You Know Her. If you know your woman, know her rhythms, know her ways. If you're paying attention to her all these years, you will know how she comes and goes, how she slips away even though she is standing in the same place. You will know that her world is drifting slowly and softly from you, and she may not mean it, because all it is she's scared to be everything, scared to be finding herself in you every time, scared that one day she will ask herself, all 40 plenty years of her, where she's been. If you know your woman, you will know that mostly she will come back. But sometimes, when she drifts like this, something can make her slip. And then coming back is hard. If you know your woman, you can tell by the way she puts on heels and she does not sashay for you because it's not about you. How she will buy some leather boots and not say a word about it, and you only see it when she walks in one night and she says she's had them forever. And you will see the way she loses the weight and pretend it's nothing, but when she isn't seeing you looking, you can see how she faces the mirror, lifts her chest to catch a profile, and how she casually looks at her ass for signs of life. If you know your woman, when you are gone, she will find things to do, like walk alone, go see a movie, find a park, collect her secrets, and you won't know because she's looking for herself. And she won't tell you that she wants to hear what idle men say when she walks past them, because what you say is not enough. If you know your woman, you know when she's going away, and you will feel the big hole of your love, and you can't tell why she's listening and humming to tunes you did not know she heard before, and she will laugh softly at nothing at all. If you know your woman, you will see how she comes and goes, and all you can do is wait and pray she will come back to you, because you know that your sins are enough for her to leave and not return. That's deep, eh? That's not so deep. That's like so on the surface is scary. Yes, well, you know. Oh dear. So, two more poems. and then we can have a conversation. But one poem is like 20 minutes long, so just kidding, don't worry. That's not, it's just 2 poems. It's a 2-poem warning. Now this is a poem, these last 2 poems are actually about my wife. They are like for my wife. It's right here, for Lorna, it says it. Like in this one I say for Lorna, and then the next one I actually call her name in the poem. So it's like unequivocal, right? They're about her. So this is a poem called The Egg and the Teacup. And there's a line that refers to the thunder egg. And we know what a thunder egg is. If you don't, look it up, Google it. It's fascinating. You'll be there for like 5 hours looking at the pictures, right? But in Haiti, the thunder egg is a term that, thunder in the egg, is a term that is used to refer to women, but apparently it's not a good thing in Creole. I don't know why. But I thought it's a beautiful, see, there you go. You see that? You heard that? Sometimes I'm so impressed with my timing. My timing is impeccable. You know, I don't have a lot of self-esteem. If I'm so proud of timing, like, I'm so proud that I got it on time. My self-esteem is shot to hell, I tell you that. Anyway, but I love the image, and so they said don't use it because it's not flattering. But I use it anyway, and because I'm using it in English, I suppose. But I think it's a powerful image, and it's an image that I think captures that strange complication between wanting. I think women understand this more than men, wanting to be at once hard and firm, but also to be fragile at the same time, wanting to having the permission to be both. And so that's what, in many ways, this poem is about, the egg and the teacup. 1, it's in 6 parts. 1, perhaps I should have asked your father for your hand, and perhaps he should have said no, just to show us he could. Then we would not wonder if it mattered at all to him. We might not have felt so on our own. 2, they never made it to your wedding. A cousin had one too, and they had to go, they said, and did. And you, they thought, could take it. And we, they thought, could handle it. So we did. He may not have meant to, but he taught me not to fear your body broken easily. But you were strong, weren't you? It takes years to learn how much you've longed to be the fragile one, the delicate vessel. 3, this is my betrayal to think you could take it, while I cupped the fragile catastrophes of others. For my vanity and the lie of misplaced care, forgive me, forgive me. I'm learning the language of husbandry, how to tend beauty, to listen to the power of a broken thing, a cup, some china, almost transparent, 2 broken pieces in a bed of soil, gleaming. 4, not that you never tried before. I simply chose to read it as your stoic way, you binging on a box of jelly-filled donuts, devoured in front of me, and always followed by the coolness of insouciant accusation and the firm pushback. Alone, you would command, and I fled. You tested me so often, and I failed you. Still, you gave me an open door as if you thought your tests too hard, too advanced for me. How we compromise for love, how we survive. I am grateful for those vivas, retesting inside our hothouse, my hands learning to caress. 5, you did not hesitate, I know, to face the violence of cancer. It looked as if the body could at last show me your wounded self, and I could see how tenderly you wanted me to touch you inside, far inside. So it was not the fear of death, nothing like that, just the knowledge of how it is written, that these things hidden in the dark will be revealed. I see you now. I hold you gingerly. I will learn you. I will. And 6, harder than a stone, but more fragile than an egg. As if in the dark of youth, one can tell them apart, the egg from the thunder egg. So I end on the last poem. This is my last poem, and it's become a kind of last poem for me. It's a benediction, and it really is about love and companionship, and it is for my wife, who has borne with me. We're going to be 25 years married this July, which is shocking. And we've known each other, we knew each other 10 years before we got married. So that's pretty impressive. So this is the poem for her in this saying. There is a way to end books, the gathered papers, their weighty gift, the clean parade of words in columns of paragraphs and in columns of images, the tidiness of things and numbered. They form the thing you have labored over for years. To end a book, you tie a blue ribbon around the heft, make a bow, kiss it. The way to end the year of cataclysms is to find a piece of land by water where old boats rot at the edges and the place smells of ancient things, sulfur, salt, rotting fish, and the deep musk of mud and grass. To then sit on a moving jetty, rocking against the universe's pulse, and there wait for the moon. To end this way alone is to end with the hollow melancholy of loss and regret. Better to end with the voice of your woman, for you will need that voice, ordinary as rain, talking your name. Perhaps it is the intrusion of her scent filling the air, or the cool of her touch, slick with tomato pulp and herbs. I know the gender of this poem. Do not worry, it is because I know the names of the bodies standing in the dusk by water. Kwame and Lorna. They will hold hands. And in this saying, the poem ends. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So do I take questions now? Yes, let's do that. That's the fun part. Yes? Anybody? Yes. What makes me want to write poems? When I write? Actually very normal. I don't get in a mood for poetry. Like I don't need to, I just make poems. It's like, so I know, obviously I've been doing this for so many years and I teach a lot of people, and a lot of people will say to me, I have to be like really angry when I write my poems, or I have to really be depressed when I write. And I think, wow, that's just so sad, because that means that's just an occupational hazard, don't you think? Like, if you've got to get mad or be depressed to write a poem, that seems really problematic to me. So no, I just write because I think, okay, I think I want to write a poem now. And then I'll write a poem. And things come to me at that point. So it's, there's no mood, there's no state, there's no condition. Sometimes it's just the anxiety that I haven't written a poem in a while. But I have to tell you that I enjoy making poems. I enjoy the process of seeing what will come of it, because I don't know what the poem is going to be about until I've written it. Then I realize what the poem is about. I don't know a poem fully until I've written it. I know something that is haunting me, an image, an idea, a thought, and then I write it, and that's when I discover what I was thinking about it. And to me, that's the pleasure of it. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Divination. No. What poem is that? How does it start? Honestly, I really don't know which poem that is. How does it start? Is it in Duppy Conqueror? Where did you see it? Somebody gave it to you. You sure I wrote it? Read, do you have it in front of you? Okay, read a line. That's pretty good. This is embarrassing. I really don't know. I don't know what the poem is about. I have no idea what we're talking about here. It's a religious poem, right? This sounds like me, yeah. I got a lot of religion in me. This is true. It's a good poem? I'm happy about that. I wasn't pushing this off. I really don't. I have no idea. I don't. So I'm so sorry. I'm actually kind of embarrassed right now. Because I should know, right? But how could I know? Like, you know how many books? I've written like 20 books of poetry. I don't know. And that's like 20% of the poems I've written. I don't know. Sorry. It's not your fault. I'm just dealing with my shame. This is how I deal with my shame and my embarrassment. I make stupid jokes that look like they're attacking somebody else. This is how I do it. All right, another question. Rescue me from my shame. Yes, over there. Yes, this is a very good question, and I always preface it by saying, do not try this at home, people. You will hurt yourself. So this is how I write, and I say that because I have many poet friends, and everybody writes in very different ways. The truth is, I write a fast first draft. And the reason I write a fast first draft is the reason I said earlier is that I really don't know what the poem is going to be about until I have finished the draft. Then I know what the poem is about. I start with an image and then I start to write. And I think I always describe my brain as a cesspool, a kind of cesspool. And if you don't know what a cesspool is, this is good because this is stuff that you don't need to know. But a cesspool is not pretty. So it collects all of this stuff, right? So like I've met all kinds of people, we've had all kinds of conversations. I'm collecting, I see stuff and so on. And then, but I don't know what I've collected. You see what I'm saying? So it's in there and I have this brain that collects stuff. And then when I start writing, the brain starts to pick up things that I've been sort of noting in my head, and they create a whole, and suddenly I discover, wow, I'm writing about this, and it's doing something for me, and so on. So that first draft, when I finish the draft, I say, okay, that's what the poem is about. After that, the poem undergoes many drafts, but that first draft typically helps me to know where the poem is going. And if I don't finish a first draft, I usually, almost 95% of the time, discard it. I never come back to it. It's because it just wasn't an idea that was finding its way. You see what I mean? So it's almost like a tightrope walk every time I start drafting a poem. But once the first draft is written, the difference between that first draft and the final draft can sometimes be vastly different, and sometimes can be really close. It just depends on how it came together and what I tried to do with it after a while. Sometimes I change the form and so on, but finishing it helps me to know what the whole thing is supposed to do. So then I can edit it to work within that context. Yeah. Yes. I see you guys over here. I'm not ignoring you. I'll take this one and then I'll come over to the side. Yes. Okay, who is the observant person, me or you? Oh, me. I'm to the younger generation. Well, I don't know. That's making a lot of assumptions about my age, isn't it? Yeah, right. What advice? You mean like generally advice? You mean like a writer advice, or just like what would I advise you to do? I've got 3 kids. I advise them to really like get through school. That's what I tell them. So I tell my kids that. I also tell them to find their passion. That's what I tell them. I say, look, let's together work with you to find the thing you're passionate about. And let's enjoy it. Let's talk about it. Let's explore it to the fullest. And then let's see if you can make a living doing that thing, right? Let's find ways to make that work. I think that becomes a kind of, but I also advise people to like travel, leave, go. And I don't mean go to like Miami. I mean leave the country, go away, go, see the world, be a minority somewhere else, or be a majority if you've been a minority. Right? If you're black, go to a black country, and it's like revelation shall hit upon thee. Oh my God, it's all of us. I am not so special anymore. It's a remarkable feeling. And then if you are white, and I'm very predominantly white, go to a place where you're a minority. Oh my goodness. Then your angst will start. You'll start saying, oh, where are people looking at me like that for? Oh, what is that? What are they thinking about me? They can feel that, like that, experience that. Oh, just go to China and just really see that there's a lot of people, like a whole lot of people in the world. And your little world is like so insignificant and irrelevant to the universe that it will put stuff in place for you. So that's my advice. I say travel. And don't tell me it's expensive. Of course not. It's like so not expensive to just, you can go you can go to Jamaica from here. You can go to Jamaica, yeah, $300. Just go there. You may have to sleep on the beach, but it's the money is good. The US dollar is pretty good now. You can go anywhere now. Did you know that? You can go anywhere. You can get anywhere. You can live on 10 cents a day in many places. But go. Don't stay. And then when you come back, don't come back and say, oh, I hate this. When you come back and say, oh, I so appreciate my country now. I hate that. Don't do that. That's just embarrassing to the other countries. I mean, it's going to happen, but don't say it. Because it just sounds, because everybody else has said it. What you should do is come back and say, God, I hate this place. I want to go back. That's what you should say. That would really piss off a lot of people. Sorry, excuse me. All right, that's my advice. It's good advice, yes. Where do I get the ideas from my poems? Encounters, talking to people, seeing things, reading. I read a lot. I look at art a lot. I look at, I look at performances, music, all kinds of things. I talk about my body as a kind of antenna, that sort of, I let things hit that body. You know, what a writer does is pay attention to their body's reactions. We all have them, but not everybody pays attention to them, you see. And I think that's part of it. So ideas come, but I don't feel, how do I put this? I don't think a writer is uniquely gifted with insight. I don't think so. I think there are a lot of stupid writers. I mean, and good writers, but they're just stupid. You're not gifted with particular insight. You're gifted, what you do is you practice paying attention. You practice it. Because, I tell you, because one of the weird things is, if there's an exercise I like to do with aspiring writers, and I tell them, they say, man, I don't know what to write about. I just don't know what to write about. I don't know what to write about. I don't know what to write about. And I think, how can that be? Like, what is that? And I don't know. I just can't think of anything to write about. So then I say, okay, here's what you're going to do. Every day for 100 days, for 100 days, you're going to write a haiku. What are you going to do? Complain? It's 3 lines. It's like, really? That's going to be like a big imposition on your life? 3 lines a day? Come on. So, and 3 short lines. So now what is your haiku going to be about? Let me tell you. Your haiku is going to be about just your journey from home to work. You see something and you write a little haiku about it. For 100 days. Every day you're going to do the haiku. You're going to do 575, you're going to count the syllables and blah, 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 but it will not take you more than 10 minutes, maximum. It won't. And almost everybody who tries that, all of a sudden, it's like the world is wide open with ideas for poems. What has happened? They're just paying attention. That's all it is. You just start paying attention because you start going, hey, I could write about that. No, I could, hey, look at that bird. I think I'd write about that. And so all of a sudden, there's all kinds of stuff you could write about because your brain is now paying attention to that. It's practice, right? So the art of finding things to write about is something you practice and you work on, and after a while, you start being alert to it. After you've done that, the things to write about, I think, are dime a dozen. What distinguishes the writer from the non-writer is the simple task of craft, being able to do it. That's the difference. Really. You can come and tell me a great story. Dangerous. Why? Because I know I've worked at my writing so much that I am good, like better than you would ever be, because I've worked on it. You give me that story, I'm using it. Forget you, because I'll be done before you do, and I'm publishing it, and it's mine. So, too bad, because your problem is you're a slacker, and you don't know how to write. That's all. Hey, I'm bright. Yeah, but you ain't gonna do anything with it. I'm doing something with it. I got skills. You ain't got no skills. And those skills are not God-given. No, I mean, really, you should see some of the stuff I started to write first of all. They weren't God-given. I couldn't write it. My writing sucked, but I got better at it. I worked on it. Like, you work on it. Now I'm good. So don't tell me no stories, because that's it. So I tell my students, you bring a poem to class for workshop, I don't know. I might take some of that with me. And I'm a big shot writer, so I'm going to be published before you, so what you going to do? Well, he stole my poem. But prove it. Prove it. You know what is funny? Writers are so paranoid. All of you sitting there who are writers are panicking like, he's serious, man. You got to watch that guy. Don't ever send him any work, man. He's serious. Actually, I am. Don't send me any work. Sorry. Other questions? Yes, over there. My biggest influence as a poet. That's tough. I have some pat set answers, but I don't know if they're real. I think my father was a big influence on me. And it was because he was my father, and he was a writer, and I began to learn. After he died, I began to pay attention to what he wrote, and I learned from that. They're poets that have moved me in interesting ways. I always was moved by, when I began to understand something like Shakespeare's work, or the books, the Psalms, or the poetry of Gerald Manley Hopkins, or the poetry of Walcott, or the poetry of Lorna Goodison, or Emily Dickinson. These poets sort of, I began to feel, okay, I can understand something, and that made me excited about repeating some things that they did. But I think always, you can be writing and imitating and engaging with writers who are far from you, distant from you, culturally and geographically and in terms of time. But it's when you find an artist that is close to your culture and speaks to you in a real powerful way that it energizes the desire to chart your life, to chart the life around you, to give voice to the experiences that you see, to the world that you see. And I think the person who did that for me was Bob Marley. And with his lyrics, he wrote about a world I was living in at the time. And the capacity to do that made me think of trying to do that with what skills I had as a poet. I say Marley, but I also mean the remarkable explosion of reggae music in the 1970s was hugely influential to my work. Now, I read a lot, so there are lots of writers who influence me, and not necessarily poets. Gabriel Garcia Marquez, I think, is amazing. August Wilson, the African-American playwright, is probably one of the top three or four playwrights America has ever produced. And if you read his work, Athol Fugard, These are fantastic writers who have excited me as a writer. Yeah. Yes. Right. In terms of writing in patois and so on, yeah, I've written in the Jamaican language. I grew up in Jamaica. I was born in Ghana, but grew up in Jamaica for the most formative years of my life. I did 2 years of primary school and then went through all high school and did my undergraduate there. So everything that is really important in your development happened to me in Jamaica. And I had to learn patois. I had to learn the language. It was a foreign language to me. When I came to Jamaica, I spoke English, and they said they did too. So this was a complicated kind of situation. We had an impasse, as they would say. And so I had to learn the Jamaican language, which taught me that it was a language. Jamaicans take the language for granted, but I never did. So I would have to sit down and say, how do you say this in Jamaican? And I would say it one way and the syntax would be wrong. And I would know that's wrong syntax. This is the way you say it in Jamaica. And so I knew I was dealing with a language when I was about 9, 10 years old. I knew I was learning a language, which has given me a different relationship with the language, because I think it's a rich and remarkable language. So I use the dialect, I use patois in direct ways, and in other ways, it affects the syntax in my poems, in the way that I write my poems, because I treat it as a rich a language of possibility. Your other question had to do with rap, right? Rap, yeah. Rap music is, to me, it is poetry. It's a poetic form, right? Because they're using all the tools. Many of the rap artists are using different tools of poetry to construct their narratives and so on. They're using rhyme, they're using meter, they're using rhythm, they're using metaphors, they're using allusions. I mean, the most dominant thing is the use of allusions. That is very much a part of the poetic thing. But, people say that and then they'll say, oh, so you're saying that, rap music is all great. And I'm saying, no, like every form of poetry, there's a limited number of artists that are really good, and then the rest just suck, like they're just useless, right? And that's true for rap. I mean, the only difference is that if you are a poet and you don't get a chance to come on stage and perform your poetry and you're like sexy and exciting, then your suckiness will be more apparent. If you're sexy, you can get away with a lot of stuff, Well, with rap now, it's got the rhythm thing. And you know what? The rhythm thing, it goes a long way. Because half the people, I say, you know what they're doing? They're saying, but man, I love the jam. So you can enjoy the rhythm and not even know what they're saying. So you can get away with a lot more in terms of the semantics and the language with music, rap or with any kind of music, because there's the music to carry it through, right? Because look, your body just responds to it. So you hear a Jamaican DJ. Listen, I could say, do my gun, do run, bum. You're still going, hey, hey. And why? Because you can see your body is starting to move already. So they got that, and that's fine. But the great, one of the things there's a reason why people say Tupac and everybody says Tupac. Really, if you take Tupac and write him down, if you take Lupe Fiasco and take them and write them down, if you take some of these artists and write down what they're doing, you really see some very sophisticated stuff going on, interesting stuff. That is good poetry. And so it's a poetic form, and some do it well, some do it badly, and it has nothing to do with how well they sell. It really doesn't. It has very little to do with how well they sell. And of course, it was invented in Jamaica, so just in case you didn't know that. like everything else. The Garden of Eden is in Jamaica, by the way. Yes. What? On me? Oh, it would have to be Ghana and Jamaica, most likely, yeah. Because I lived there the longest, and I mean, it's clearly, those have shaped me. I've been to places that have moved me and that I feel connected to for reasons that sometimes I don't understand. I like Cape Town in South Africa. I shouldn't. It's the refuge of the last of the white South Africans. That's where they told Mandela, we're keeping Cape Town. And so Mandela said, you can have Cape Town. So I shouldn't like it, but it's a great town. I love it. It's just a weird, complicated, beautiful town. And I like it. So what can I say? Maybe I'm racist. That's it. So that's the best I can say. But, you know, and I loved it in Delhi, in New Delhi. But then sometimes, you know, a place is because of the people I meet there. You know what I mean? Less so the place itself, but the people that I meet there. And when I was in Delhi, in India, I have a good friend, Shudip Sen, who's a poet. And we just spent a lot of time talking. And I remember the talks and the food. The food is like a big deal. I had like, they had like an eggplant dish there, man, that thing. Like, I don't like eggplant, but man, I just became I just started worshiping the eggplant. It's like we should start a religion called eggplant. Eggplant. We'll just worship eggplant and then get it cooked that way all the time. I'll take two more because I see people drifting. Yes, one. Was poetry my first choice as a career? It's still not my choice as a career. Poetry has never been a choice as a career. No. I was always going to write poetry, but I've never imagined myself making a living on poetry. Not because it just doesn't work. You know, you do the math, it doesn't add up. And it doesn't need to. Do you understand what I'm saying? It doesn't need to for it to be a vocation. You know, vocation is what you do, and sometimes you subsidize your vocation. And I subsidized writing poetry. I was a playwright for many years, and I still write plays. But the career I knew I was going to have was very clear. I was going to be a lawyer. I applied for law school. I was going to go to law school. And then God told me that's not a good idea because you're going to be the worst, despicable, most evil lawyer that ever came on the face of the earth. And I got a vision. The vision told me what I would look like as a lawyer. I'll be like 300 pounds and everybody would be calling me boss. By now I'll be dead. And I would have been the most vicious because I love to argue with people and to really stomp them. Like I don't even end the argument when I've won. I just like keep going until people start crying. That's the only time that's the only time I will say, maybe I'll leave it alone. When they start weeping, then I'll go, okay, I guess I won that one. So that vision came to me very clearly, and so I decided, well, okay, I'll teach, because that way I can argue but have permission to do that. Like I don't even have to argue, I just tell them what I think. And so my plan was to be a teacher, and I started teaching high school, and my life has been teaching. That's my passion, that's my vocation, that's my profession, that's what I do. And then all the other stuff I do around it, publishing, editing, writing, and all that kind of stuff, feeds into that space. It's part of that whole space. So there was no point in which I said, I'm going to become a poet as a vocation. I had to convince myself that I could call myself a poet. I am amazed. I did not, when somebody said to me, the first time I said I was a poet, I'm serious, I think I had 2 books of poetry already published. Because people would say, you're a poet? I said, no, I write poems. I write poems occasionally. But I couldn't even say I'm a poet. Because I just thought poets are like this thing there. They're just like, to say you're a poet, do you understand understand what that means? If you come and tell me you're a poet, I'll go like, yeah, really? Like, okay, let me hear what you got to say, Mr. Poet. Because a poet has got to have something. Like, you don't just say you're a poet. Like, there are people, like, they're like really, really good people, like important people who are poets. I don't just take that lightly. I can do just sit down and wrote one poem and goes, hey, look, I'm a poet. Look, I just wrote that. No, you're not. You just wrote like one poem. That don't make you a poet. Well, maybe it does. But you see, this is what I'm doing. I'm about to make people cry now. You see, this is why God told me, don't do that. I can see people starting to go, but I am a poet. Why is he saying that about me? You know, what does he mean by that? See, this is why. So, one last question. I'm so sorry. You had a question. I heard a male voice and I saw a woman's hand, so that must be you. Yes. Yeah. That's easy because there's a funny way in which, and this is probably one of the reasons why I really am grateful for art. It's a limited, longevity is a limited thing. It's limited, but it is something that stays after you're gone for at least a short time. And there's something about that. There's something about a life lived and a life expressed and a way to retain the essence of that life in language that is very appealing and very satisfying and very comforting. I was about 22 years old when my father died. And what sustained me was reading his words because he was a writer. And I don't know what I would have done if he wasn't a writer, if he didn't write these words, these poems, these stories. And I take comfort in that. I take comfort because I've written a lot of books and I know my kids haven't read any of them. So I'm figuring if I die now, they're gonna have to read all of that. And they've got a ton of stuff to learn, you know, to discover about me. And that fills me with a vicious, evil kind of pleasure, but also it does comfort me. Because there's a way in which the art, you think about it, all the writers that we still pay attention to, whether we did them in school and so on, so whatever the reason, something remains. And it's the old Keatsian idea, the Grecian urn, the idea of trying to live out beyond your physical body through language, through art and that kind of thing. And so that's the comfort. So when I read Kofi Awona's poems, I read Kofi Awona because when I read his work, I'm not just reminded of him, but he's there again. He's still there. He left something tangible, palpable, whole, and beautiful. And that's a gift. That's a sustaining gift. And that's something that art does, and few other things do as well as art. Okay? Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.